Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Hari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Kari Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Sirambana Chari Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nam Namo Naram Chavanarottam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tojayam Udirayet Naprayeshvadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. We're reading this morning from chapter 12 of the first canto. And we have quite a few texts to read, so can we do ladies' side, men's side? Let's pass the mic around, starting with text 12. Before we start, though, I want to do a little review. I count 6 chapters in the first canto where Maharaj Yudhisthira appears, and this is no 3. Appears where a significant role. So I want to ask, first of all, the new students who have just been here for this semester, can you name the first 2 places where Maharaj Yudhisthira appears in the first canto? And these are chapters we have covered before today. The place, the past, yeah. 2 past times prior to this where Maharaj Yudhisthira has been the focal, or a focal point.
The side of a river.
Okay, that's good. Okay. And who was there?
Someone who had like 10 days to live.
Yeah. Who was that? Bhishma. Who was giving him advice? Yeah. Okay, right. Good. Nate, that's very good. Just remember the river. That's.
It always happens like that.
Yeah, there was one before that. Okay, it was associated with Kurukshetra. It was after Kurukshetra. First time we saw him in the Bhagavatam, Krishna in the Bhagavatam. What pastime was that? I know.
Where everybody was coming to see him?
No, something very tragic had just happened. I know you know. This is like 5 chapters back. When his wife, Draupadi, and Yudhisthira were having some discussion with Bhima about what should be done with a certain person. Ashwatthama, yes, okay, very good. So those 2 are the first 2. Now we're seeing him in this chapter. Now, for the more experienced students who've read the first canto hundreds of times, there's 3 more times in the first canto as a focal point. Can you think of the other 3? Yes, when you're just using all these omens and then yes, and I do one before that. It's right after this chapter. No, he's with you. There, Vidura and Vidura's there. You just was very broken-hearted at that. Okay, good. And then one more after Krishna's departure. What happens? After Arjuna comes back from Dwarka, what happens next?
It's the discussion about asking questions from Arjuna about
right after all that. After Arjuna's return, answered all the questions, what did Yudhisthira do? There's a whole chapter devoted to this. Yeah, and the Pandavas retire timely, and Yudhisthira leads them. He just renounces. Okay, so very good. So, in all of those other 5 chapters, And once again, Yudhisthira with Ashwatthama, Yudhisthira with Bhishma. If you're miserable, we're doing well. Okay.
Purificatory process of birth performed. Learned Brahmas, headed by Dayuma and Kripa, recited auspicious hymns.
Can we?
I thought you were going to read.
Yeah, switching men, women, and women. Let's just pass it. That's all right.
Upon the birth of a son, the king, who knew how, where, and when charity should be given, gave gold, land, villages, elephants, horses, and good food grains to the brahmanas.
The learned brahmanas, who were very satisfied with the charities of the king, addressed him as the chief amongst the Purus, and informed him that his son was certainly in the line of descent from the Purus.
The Brahmanas said, "This spotless son has been restored by the all-powerful and all-pervasive Lord Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, in order to oblige you. He was saved when he was doomed to be destroyed by an irresistible supernatural weapon."
For this reason, this child will be well known in the world as one who is protected by the personality of Godhead. O most fortunate one, there is no doubt that this child will become a first-class devotee and will be qualified with all good qualities.
The good King Yudhishthira inquired, "O great souls, will he become as saintly a king as Paris in his very name and as famous in glorifying his achievements as others who appeared in this great royal family?"
The learned Brahmanas said, "O son of Pritha, this child shall be exactly like King Ikshvaku, son of Manu, in maintaining all those who are born. And as for following the Brahminical principles, especially in being true to his promise, he shall be exactly like Rama, the personality of Godhead, the son of Maharaj Dasharatha."
This child will be a munificent donor of charity and protector of the surrender, like the famous King Sivi of the Usinara country, and he will expand the name and fame of his family like Bharata, the son of Maharaja Dushyanta.
Amongst great bowmen, this child will be as good as Arjuna. He'll be as irresistible as fire and as unsurpassable as the ocean.
This child will be as strong as a lion and as worthy a shelter as the Himalayan mountains. He will be forbearing like the earth and as tolerant as his parents.
This child will be like his grandfather Yudhisthira or Brahma in equanimity of mind. He will be magnificent like the Lord of the Grisha hill, Shiva, and he will be the resort of everyone, like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, who is even the shelter of the goddess of fortune.
The child will be almost as good as Lord Shri Krishna by following in his footsteps. In magnanimity, he will become as great as King Rantadeva. And in religion, he will be like Maharaj Yati.
This child will be like Bali Maharaj in patience, a staunch devotee of Lord Krishna like Prahlad Maharaj, a performer of many ashramedha or horse sacrifices, and a follower of the old and experienced men.
This child will be the father of kings, who will be like sages. For world peace and for the sake of religion, he will be the chastiser of the upstarts and the quarrelsome.
After hearing about his death, which will be caused by the bite of a snake bird sent by the son of a Brahmana, he will get himself free from all material attachment and surrender unto the personality of Godhead, taking shelter of him.
After inquiring about proper self-knowledge from the son of Vyasadeva, who will be a great philosopher, he will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness.
Thus, those who were expert in astrological knowledge and in performance of the birth ceremony instructed King Yudhisthira about the future history of his child. Then, being sumptuously remunerated, they all returned to their respective homes.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll do text 30 in detail here. Sa esha loki vikyata Parikshit itiyat Prabhu Purvam drishtam anudhyayam Pariksheta nareshviha Sa esha loke vikyatma Vikyata Parikshit itiyat Prabhu Purvam Vrishtam Anudhyayam Pariksheta Nareshviha. Please chant. Saesha Loke Vikyata Parikshit itiyat Prabhu Purvam Drishtam Anudhyaya Pariksheta Nareshviha Saesha Loki Vikyata Parikshit itiyat Prabhu Purvam Drishtam Anudhyayam Pariksheta Nareshita Saesha Loke Vikyata Parikshit itiyat Prabhu Purvam Drishtam Anudhyayam Pariksheta Nareshviha Saesha Loke Vikyata Parikshit itiyat Prabhu Purvam Drishtam Anudhyayam Pariksheta Nareshviha. Okay, synonyms together, please. Sa, he, Aisha, in this, okay, world, Vikyataha, examines. Iti, thus, yet, what, who, my king, Purvam, before, Drishtam, seen, Nudhyayan, constantly contemplating, Pariksheta, shall examine, Nareshu, under every man, Kaiha, here. In translation together. So his son would become famous in the world as Parikshit, examiner, because he would come to examine all human beings in his search after that personality whom he saw before his birth. Thus he would come to constantly contemplate him. Who'd like to read the purport? Right? Max?
Maharaja Parikshit, fortunate as he was, got the impression of the Lord even in the womb of his mother, and thus his contemplation on the Lord was constantly with him. Once the impression of the transcendental form of the Lord is fixed in one's mind, one can never forget him in any circumstance. Child Parikshit, after coming out of the womb, was in the habit of examining everyone to see whether he was the same personality whom he first saw in the womb. But no one could be equal to or more attractive than the Lord, and therefore he never accepted anyone. But the Lord was constantly with him by such examination, and thus Maharaj Parikshit was always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord by remembrance. Srila Jiva Goswami remarks in this connection that every child, if given an impression of the Lord from his very childhood, certainly becomes a great devotee of the Lord like Maharaj Parikshit. One may not be as fortunate as Maharaj Parikshit to have the opportunity to see the Lord in the womb of his mother, but even if he is not so fortunate, he can be made so if the parents of the child desire him to be so. There is a practical example in my personal life in this connection. My father was a pure devotee of the Lord, and when I was only 4 or 5 years old, my father gave me a couple of forms of Radha and Krishna. In a playful manner, I used to worship these deities along with my sister, and I used to imitate the performances of a neighboring temple of Radha Govinda. By constantly visiting this neighboring temple and copying the ceremonies in connection with my own deities of play, I developed a natural affinity for the Lord. My father used to observe all the ceremonies befitting my position. Later on, these activities were suspended due to my association in the schools and colleges, and I became completely out of practice. But in my youthful days, when I met my spiritual master, Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, again, I revived my old habit, and the same playful deities became my worshipful deities in proper regulation. This was followed up until I left the family connection, and I'm pleased that my generous father gave the first impression, which was developed later into regular devotional service by his divine grace. Maharaj Prahlad also advised that such impressions of a godly relation must be impregnated from the beginning of childhood. Otherwise, one may miss the opportunity of the human form of life, which is very valuable, although it is temporary like others.
Prabhupada ki jai. This is a very rare occasion in Srimad Bhagavatam where Srila Prabhupada is speaking about his personal experiences. And we have to remember that this was before there was ISKCON, before there were any disciples, before Prabhupada had ever left India. So he was writing about this recollection of Krishna from his youth and sharing this rather intimate recollection with us. He was not a famous person, so you have to wonder, for whom was he writing? Later, he was unwilling to have a biography written about him during his life, although he said one could be written later on. So in that biography, there is a great detailed description about Srila Prabhupada's childhood, how his father gave him these deities, how he and his sister Pishima would worship them, how when he went to college, he put them in a box, kept them in a closet, and later when he was married, how he met his spiritual master and revived his worship of the deities and continued that throughout the rest of his household life. He did not take the deities with him, to my knowledge, when he left his family life. So this gives us a lot of insight about this point of impressionable youth. It's that the children are like clay or soft dough. You can turn soft dough into any number. Impressionable, especially 2-3 years old. They tell them anything and they will believe it. Once I told my son, we were passing a milk truck on the highway. I said, "Did you know that this truck can actually run on the milk that it's carrying?" He said, "Really?" So that's one of the reasons why little children are so cute, because they'll believe anything. So if those children are exposed to Krishna consciousness in their youth, there's a good chance that they will imbibe lifelong memories and moods from that experience. Then the psychology changes as the children get older. They will become more independent. When children are between 11 and 15 years old, then that's the time when they have to be taught the philosophy, because their intelligence is developing. So at that point, children need to be impacted intellectually in order to remain Krishna conscious. And then by the time children are 16, 17, they're done. For better or worse, you can't change them. And now you just have to befriend them. And so this is how the psychology of children unfolds. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj says, as Srila Prabhupada refers to at the end of the purport, Komaram acharet pragyo dharmam bhagavatam niha. That from the very beginning of life, one should learn Krishna consciousness. This verse was spoken in context of Prahlad going to school and teaching his playmates, his classmates, who are all sons of demons, about Krishna consciousness. Nothing could have made his father more pleased. And the children, although they were sons of demons, they were receptive to what he was saying, but their first inclination is like most people. They said, well, why do we have to worry about that now? We're young, we're supposed to have fun, we're supposed to play. Why do we have to talk about all this philosophical stuff now? To which Prahlad Maharaj replied that Komara Macharat Pragyo, from the very beginning of life, one should learn about Krishna. It said that it's always too late. It's always too late to take up Krishna consciousness, but it's never too early. So at any time you take up Krishna consciousness, that's good. Now, here in Krishna House, we have two divisions of humanoids. We have the organics and the GMOs. Okay, so organics are those who have been brought up in Krishna consciousness. So who here are organics? Okay, we got four or five organics here. And the GMOs are those who've taken up Krishna consciousness later in life, the rest of us. The GMO stands for Gauranga Modified Organism. And so the organics have this advantage from the very beginning of life or early in their lives. They've been exposed to spirituality. And therefore, the transition is not nearly as difficult. For example, if an organic takes up Krishna consciousness, and if a GMO takes up Krishna consciousness, the parents say, what? I can't repeat what they say. Oh. And it's more of it's a struggle because children naturally want to please the parents. It's just inbred by DNA, as a matter of protection. You want to please your parents, you want to make your parents happy, and then you make your parents very unhappy, and so that's like one more austerity one has to undergo as a GMO, generally speaking. But the conversion experience for the GMO is so much more impactful, generally speaking. There's such a transition. Whereas for the organic, it still has to be there. The impressions of youth are not sufficient to make that transition. Still, as an adult, you have to decide, I want to be a devotee. I really want to practice bhakti. I really want to pursue initiation. I really want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to go back to Godhead in this life. Nothing else is going to supplant that as my first priority. So in this way, you have an advantage, but it's not a built-in guarantee just to be born in a devotee family. But those impressions of youth, of childhood are very, very powerful. We have the very extreme examples like Maharaj Parikshit, who saw Krishna in the womb and then for the rest of his life was looking and trying to see, does anyone measure up to this person I saw in the womb? This is why he's called Parikshit, or examiner. He was checking out each person that he would meet. Is this person good enough or as good as the person I saw in the womb? Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings about telling his life story. He said, in my mother's womb, I suddenly remembered that, or I suddenly had darshan of Krishna. Yes, yeah, I had darshan of Krishna for a moment. And when I saw him, I promised him, this lifetime I will serve you, I will worship you, I will not forget you. But then when I was born, all my relatives were there, mother and father, oh, such a nice baby, coochie coochie coo. And I started thinking, this material world is not such a bad place. Now, he says, in my old age, I realized I've wasted my whole life. What am I going to do? This is one of his beautiful bhajans. One of my godbrothers was telling me about his biology class in college. They were doing a section on human anatomy, and they had some picture of, like a ultrasound picture of a child in the womb. So he was not a devotee at this time. He never heard of Krishna consciousness, but he was looking at that. And he said, that kid is praying. So that struck him. He remembered later when he read this. Yes, the child is suffering in the womb of the mother for 9 months, and the child is born, more suffering. I have never seen a child born laughing. There is it's just one miserable thing after the next. And the experience Parikshit Maharaj had of seeing Krishna stayed with him for his life. So the question for us is, how about our first impressions of Krishna consciousness? There is a period in all of our lives where we get this intense realization that Krishna is the goal of life. So that what we have been doing up to this point has been misdirected. And now, all of a sudden, this very unexpected, esoteric, blue flute-playing deity has suddenly entered the realm of reality in our consciousness. Yes, this is God, and God exists, and this is who he is. It is so rare that somebody gets that realization, isn't it? Manusyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye. Krishna says, out of thousands among men, hardly anyone is interested in spiritual life, even interested. See it every day on campus, right? But of those few who are interested in spirituality, very few come to know me in full. Therefore, we all have this impression in our consciousness of our first interactions with devotees. I still, after 50 years, I still have dreams about the ashram in Portland, Oregon, where I moved into the temple. And I still remember the feelings and the sights and experiences, and it's been foundational for my whole adult life. Anyone else anyone like to share some of their first impressions of Krishna consciousness that have stayed with them? Prema?
When I was in high school, my friend Radha Priya, she took me to the Alachua temple for the first time for Sunday feast, and I remember we walked into the temple room, and I remember just seeing bare feet spinning around and colorful dresses, and we paid obeisances. But I didn't notice Prabhupada. I didn't notice Radhesham, Krishna Balaram, Gaurnitai. I only saw the devotees dancing and singing Hare Krishna. And I can still see it through my 16-year-old eyes now. I can still see all the outside, all the girls in their beautiful dresses, and everybody, enjoying the Sunday feast. Is such a strong impression.
Amazing. And all the bare lotus feet. What was your emotional reaction to all of that?
I felt like this was the most perfect place in the world. I fell in love.
Obviously some past life connections. All right. Anyone else want to share, John?
Hare Krishna. I remember when I was about 5 or 6, and my mom took me to Alachua Temple, and it was before the temple that's there was built, and they had the groundbreaking ceremony for it, and they had a huge hole, and they had the Nanta Shesha deity at the bottom on some marble, and everybody got to shovel in some dirt, and I remember putting some into it, and my impression of that was this is really exciting and important. But right before that, I had remembered seeing the blueprints for the temple and seeing the checkered floor and how big they said it was going to be. And I remember at 5 years old going there's no way they're going to build this. This is humongous, this is too big.
That's funny. Now it's not nearly big enough, but anyway. Okay. Anyone else like to share? Max, your first impression of meeting devotees, what was?
when I first read Prabhupada's books, that's how I came to Krishna consciousness. I was like, wow, no one has spoken about these kind of solutions, about these kind of problems in this way. This is the highest philosophy I've ever read in my life. And then I went to the temple and I met the devotees and I was like, what a bunch of bums, like hippies. These guys don't have jobs. Like they look like they just don't even take care of themselves. So I was like, what the heck, man, maybe I don't belong here. But then after the Sunday service, when we took prasadam, I saw it was socially acceptable to eat with your hands. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I do belong here. It's okay. And then it only went up from there.
Yeah, they were thinking the same thing about you, by the way. But seek it from.
I remember having an experience of just relief, like real relief. So I had left religious life in the Orthodox Church as a monk, really desperately wanting to know who is God the Father, well introduced to Jesus Christ. And that was a tremendous, process, chanting his name and so forth. But I spent 7 years back in Denver trying to figure out what's the next step and who is God the Father. And coming to the temple, and it was just such a relief to say, well, here's God the Father. This is the Father of our Lord Jesus. And it was like, it was very nice. Yeah. And the brahmacharis there, my impression of them was that they were so clean and nice and dedicated.
Different perspectives.
Dedicated. Well, they weren't at least a bunch of crusty old monks, with last night's bread in their beard. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Could you be a little more visceral? So let's see. Oh, Carmen, please.
I remember when I first went to the Dallas temple. That was the first temple I visited growing up. Me and my sisters, we didn't know what to wear, so we were like in shorts. And I remember walking through the doors and smelling the incense and the ghee lamps, and then seeing like the 3D paintings there. And it was so beautiful. And then I remember we walked into the temple room and people were very colorful. I remember like the moon. Desire to go and run up there. And then I heard the mridanga for the first time, and it felt like the vibrations shook throughout my whole body, and I wanted to play the mridanga ever since. So it was such a sweet experience. The Matajis, they dressed up me and my sisters in gopi skirts and saris and bindis and tilak, and it was a very special experience.
It's very sweet. So we heard from organics and from GMOs, and even from mature adults who had their first experience. Yeah. So all of these impressions they've impacted all of our hearts, right? And somehow they sustain us in our practice of bhakti, even when there's obstacles from inside, from outside. So that's the power of these impressions. The difference, of course, in spiritual life and material life. In material life, you really don't have to do anything but go with the flow, because the whole kinetic energy is directing you to just do, school, job, family, retirement, and somewhere along the line, you find the perfection of life. And then spiritual life means, no, I'm going to take a different path. I may still have school, family, career, and retirement, but those are all subordinate things that I'm biding my time doing while I'm waiting to leave this material body and leave this material world altogether. So I see that it's just a different perspective. But the impressions that we have from our early days are really important to sustain us while we're swimming upstream in a materialistic society. We're not going to get a lot of endorsement from materialistic people. As Madhavendra Puri, Lord Chaitanya's spiritual predecessor, said, ever since I've taken up Krishna consciousness, my family think I'm crazy. My friends tell me I'm foolish. Wealthy people tell me I'm wasting my time when I could be earning so much money. And the wise philosophers tell me I'm really puffed up. I think I know everything. And the strict followers of Vedanta think I'm being misled. And still, my determination to serve Govinda does not budge 1 inch, even though I'm unable to do it. This is the existential position of a devotee. Yes, everybody's in other words, if somebody is truly taking to spirituality, then people who are materialistic immediately feel threatened. What if this person is right? What if my whole life has been wasted? You know, Madhava Prabhu, our Madhava, who's chairman of our board here, he was telling me in his office at UF, he had a poster on the wall from despair.com. Despair.com is this website where you can order demotivational posters. So this particular poster was a big picture of the Titanic sinking. And the caption is, what if your entire life is just an example to others of what not to do? So this is why when materialistic people see a devotee coming, they see death personified. What if this person is right and I'm wrong? So naturally, a lot of defenses come up. People will question and try to talk us out of it and try to tempt us with various things against the regular principles, any number of ways, anything to get us back to the flow that they're in. So it's a real challenge to be a devotee. That's why these early impressions are so important and so powerful. The first awakening of our Krishna consciousness, and when we all of a sudden see the reality and understand the totality of our situation in life, we understand that we are spiritual beings struggling with our mind and senses, and all the external stuff that we're going through is just a covering. It doesn't deal with the critical, essential issues of life. We have the realization that these crazy devotees actually know something. We have the realization that dancing and chanting is fun. It's this kind of fun that we haven't experienced in maybe since our early childhood. Price we pay for staying in spiritual life, that it's not static. You can't just say, okay, I believe in Krishna, done. Back. Spiritual experiences, new spiritual awakenings every day. Every time we get up, every time we reach for the beads, every time we go to class, every time we go to a kirtan, every time we do service, we are renewing those impressionable experiences and therefore sustaining ourselves. The Christians have this saying that you have to pick up your cross every day. Remember that, Rasika, right? Yeah. So that's what it means in Krishna consciousness. Fortunately, you don't have to pick up a cross, just a bead bag. But it is a daily renewal. So that's why we need to be together, we need to encourage each other, we need to keep an association with devotees so that we keep remembering and renewing those impressions of our early days in spiritual life. Any comments or reflections, questions? Max?
made me think of something about how on a daily basis we need to keep re-imbibing these impressions, because when I was living on my own before I came here, it's like, oh yeah, in the evening if I read Bhagavatam or chanted some japa, okay, I'd be Krishna conscious, and then I'd wake up the next day and it's like I completely forgot everything from the day before. I'm just a complete materialist again and all this, but it's nice being here because since we are so engaged and there's so much of a community here, it's like when I'm getting ready for bed at night, it's like samsara davana, and you wake up, it's like Shri Guru Chana, like, it's like it never stops. Like you wake up, you're already in the vibe or in the devotional spirit. Yeah. So it's nice that it's so strong here that it just kind of carries over into the next day.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. Yes, that's the idea. Yeah, this is the Cape Canaveral or the Cape Kennedy of ISKCON here, where you launch. We talked about the phases of childhood, just the same thing in the phases of life in the ashrams. So the early years are meant to get that momentum and have those deep impressions. Because when you are out of the ashram on your own, the mojo has to come from within. Right? So that momentum can carry over, but it takes even more determination. This is why householders are called adhikari, those who are capable. That's the meaning of adhikari, those who can do, those who can take the ashram experience and transplant it into their own ashram and create their own ashram. And then, beyond that, create their own association, either the hard way or the fun way. And by fun, I mean preaching. Yes, Prabhu. Oh, Aisha? Who's more humble? Whoever goes first is most humble.
I am. I have a question. You're talking about the early impressions of devotional service, like as a child, but how do we reconcile, like when someone who grows up in a devotee family, but later they, like in their 20s, 30s, seemingly have no interest in devotional life? Mm-hmm. Is that like, you question the parents, you question the child? Like,
no, it's a question of the child, because every individual has to make their own decision. And it's the nature of children to rebel against their parents' values, although they tend to take them later on in life, right? If there's not a real conscious effort to direct one's own life. Yeah. Anyway, yes, and this is a real challenge amongst devotee families, because devotee families will do everything possible to raise a child, and it's a devotee, and a little Prahlad Maharaj, little demigods, and then, 16, 17, they may choose a different direction. And of course, it's very embarrassing for the parents, it's very demoralizing, very discouraging. And this is why it's so important to understand that everybody has to row their own boat, We get strength from others, but we can't depend on them to take us back to Godhead. We have to make our own resolution. This is important to me, therefore I'm going to do what is important. You can't judge parents by how the children come out. You can't judge children by the parents' efforts. It's an individual matter. Just one quick example is his name Shah Jahan, who was a very artistic, liberal, creative king, Muslim king, and then his son was Aurangzeb, the demon. Yeah, put his father in jail. Yeah. So that's for.
I had two quick comments. First comment was, Bhakti Maharaj said that those gems or those experiences, they happen throughout the whole spiritual life. He said different stages of our spiritual life, there's certain impressions that we have to, those gems, he said, we have to put in a treasure chest in our heart. He said occasionally we have to go back and go through our treasures, especially in times when we feel down. Something happened to me last week. I was sharing with some devotees. It was really impressed me. I was sitting, I was listening to these two ladies speaking. One of them was an elder lady, and she was talking about her 5-year-old grandson. And it's in regards that intelligence wakes up at about 5 years old. she said that he was bugging her with this question. He said, well, my sister is older, so how is that? She's like, well, because your mommy gave birth to your sister first, and then you came. And then the next question he asked is, so where was I? She's like, well, you just weren't there. Like, no, but where was I before I, was born? He kept asking this intelligent question. The soul kind of realizes, okay, I'm eternal. It's just, it can't imagine not existing. But she just shrugged him off. Listen, it just didn't exist. That's it. You weren't there anymore. That's it.
Exist.
I was depressed for 2 days after this. It's just because she shut that door. And it's, Bhakti Maharaj also talks about, he says, when parents shrug off those questions of kids that start asking, they bug them so much, they just refuse to answer them, and kids no longer treat those questions as scientific. And in the future, when we meet them on campus, not interested.
Yeah.
So it's very tragic.
Wow, just that so quickly. Very, very interesting. Yeah. Okay. And therefore, we can add to that people think, who are thus trained or misled about their eternality, they tend to think, okay, when death comes, then it's all over again. And therefore, what's the point of life? Let me die. It can be suicidal. It can get like Buddhism. Buddhism is big on that. Obliterating existence is the relief of suffering. It's all about just getting relief of suffering. And yes, so many ways. Suicide, drugs, just let me try to avoid zone out, binge watching. Okay, anything else? Advaita Prabhu?
Thank you very much. I was just thinking how interesting it is that Prabhupada, when he left, he did not carry his deities with him. But yet, the deities were there. Same Radha Govinda were waiting for him in New York, of all the places. So it's very interesting to see how Krishna actually stayed. The deities were left behind. He stayed all along because of his endeavors to, push on the mission of his spiritual master.
Very good point. Yeah, this is what, of course, Yudhishthira Maharaj said to Vidura, Tirtha Korvanti Tirtani, wherever you go is a tir. You've been to all these holy places, but actually anywhere you are is a holy place.
And he faced so many challenges. I mean, it wasn't like, I was just listening to the interview from 1967 in San Francisco. And it was one of those like caller interviews. There was a lady who called, says, where'd you get your money to travel? And Prabhupada said, well, I was a shipping company that provided my passage. And then she wasn't satisfied. So where'd you get the money to get your food? Who feeds you? And he said, well, there was a sponsor letter that, I was a guest to the host, and they oh, so you're freeloading. So he was attacked from early on, but Prabhupada said, yes.
He said yes.
He said yes. But I don't think he understood what freeloader is. If he just kept going with this, and he said, then she challenged again. She said, why did you open the temple in High Ashbury here, your so-called temple? Then Prabhupada understood that. He said, so-called temple. And then he kept preaching. And then interviewer, the host, the radio host, he understood. So he took over. But we can see how, Prabhupada never really gave up on, maintaining that early on flame and pushing on regardless of all the, challenges and envious people.
This is a really good example because people look at devotees and like Max was saying, oh, they don't have jobs. How are they doing? So in Los Angeles, Srila Prabhupada said the neighbors were looking, and they have this nice church, and they have so many vans in the parking lot, and they're not going to jobs to work in the morning. And Prabhupada said, yes, so you tell them, why don't you join us? Yes, that's all true. Why don't you join us? Why are you working so hard? Gopi, last word? We're out of time. Okay. Are we going to have prasadam in or outside this morning? Outside. Okay. Bundle up. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.